I should mention that I'm in a basement, so there's lots of squeaking and squawking going on upstairs. If you hear all of that, I'm just gonna ignore it. Also, I decided to do the noisy candle. It smells so good. It smells like pear and coconut. It's so good. Good morning, it's Karen, and welcome to my August wrap up. These are the books that I read in August. Now I'm going to skim over the ones that I read for my Leo season vlog. I will leave the link for that vlog below. This was my most favorite vlog I have ever done. It was books that I had predicted would be a 5-star for me. I don't want to give anything away, but there were 5 stars all around. Those 4 reads were, I read Rosewater, I read Red Mars, Three Fires, and The Name of the Rose. If you're looking for more in-depth reviews for those ones, that's where you're going to find them. Because the bulk of my reading was done in that vlog, this is going to be actually a pretty short wrap-up. We're only going to be looking at 4 books. The first one that I read was a tiny little book, and that was called Once Upon a Tome. For some reason, I thought I needed to find a book that had the word once in it, and I could not for the life of me find one that I was interested in. You'll see back in July I had a little bit of a rant with that one. This one I came across. It is a teeny tiny memoir about a bookseller in London. He sort of happens upon this career, and it's all of his little anecdotes about working in a bookshop. The bookshop is a well-established antique shop where they do sell some other things, but mainly books are their thing. He talks about customers, he talks about his colleagues, he talks about how you acquire books and how you define them. And it was cute, but ultimately for me, this could have been anything in retail. You know, like if you've ever worked in retail, you come up with your own catchphrases for different types of customers. It's just how it is. While this was lovely, I could only give it 3 stars. I would recommend it if you're into books about books, and I really enjoyed the narrator. Ooh, the next one was The Book of Thorns by Hester Fox. Hester Fox is now on my do not read list. I feel so sad about that. This has all the potential in the world. It is Napoleonic era. There are 2 sisters. They have green magic. So they can kind of make flowers come to life based on their emotions, and they have like an eye for certain flowers. Like one sister does bouquets at a manor, the other sister starts working on medicine with them, and it has potential. I had to read a lot of reviews in order to kind of put my own thoughts in order. I think someone termed this as women's fiction, or sorry, women's history fiction. And I guess I could see that. There was a lot less history than I would have liked. For an era in history that's so rich with possibility, this felt really flat for me. It felt more focused on the relationships. And when I say relationships, I mean like insta romances. So, like, one sister runs away from home because she's being mistreated, and she ends up finding herself in an encampment full of soldiers, and she encounters a laundress and a soldier. Oh, and there's also a side soldier that could be a possible love interest. Like it was too much and it was too easy. I think the author was trying to create a bond so tight to explore love and loss in time of war. But when you have an insta love like this, it felt more like they were just connecting with each other out of the feeling of what's there to lose. The reason why I wanted to read this book was because there were two sisters. And I do love a book where there are sisters. If you don't know, I have three sisters, and I love exploring those complex dynamics of family and siblings. And these sisters didn't even know each other existed. And they didn't meet each other until like the last 30% of the book. Like they saw each other in passing and they're like, "Oh, that person looks really interesting. I'll maybe try and find them later." Don't market it as a sister story if really it's just two separate stories where they kind of converge at the end. I just can't. The plant magic, it was okay. But I felt like it was a side thing. It was like an afterthought. And I wanted that to be the main, like, let's have sisters, then plant magic, then romance. It did not hit all of the buttons, and I am no longer going to read anything by Hester Fox. That's that. I gave this 2 stars generously. This next one, I definitely totally picked up because it had the same title as another book on my TBR, Whale Fall. At the beginning of the year, my very first book of the year was Whale Fall. This one was about a scuba diver being swallowed by a whale and then having to survive. This one, Whale Fall, is about a very remote island in the British Isles and the way of life of fishermen and a small community that is very separate from the rest of society. And the inciting incidents are a whale washes up on the shore and two, oh, what are they called? Ecologists come to the island to write a book and research this dying type of lifestyle. So we follow one character mainly, and she is kind of telling us about the experiences that she has on this island. And this is such a glimpse into these remote villages and how community is so important and traditions are so important, and how modern society kind of threatens the way of life. This is a very lovely depiction of rural living, extremely rural living. And I really enjoyed this one. There was such beautiful writing in this. There were songs included, there were anecdotes included. Like, it felt like this was a labor of love. And I'm really pleased to have read this one. This was 4 stars for me. Whale Fall at times reminded me a lot of this book called Hag. This is a rewriting of folk tales from the British Isles, and I think these 2 books would be incredibly amazing to read together. In fact, this one has stuck with me. Now, first off, I just picked it because of the cover, 100%. This is a wonderful book to read in October, so if you're looking for a book of short stories that has a very dark loveliness to it, I would highly recommend this one. This one has some great writers in it, and it has the original tales. So you get the original tale and then the rewriting of them. And the last book that I finished in like the last 3 days was Tyranny of Faith. This is the second book in the Empire of the Wolf series. I love this series. This is one of my favorite fantasy series currently. So this one unfortunately took me a long time to read, not because it's hard to read, not because it's complex or anything. It just took me a while. So I think I started this back in May, and then I stalled. Other things became priorities, and this kind of got pushed aside, and that's okay because I absolutely loved this one. This was a delight. It started off with a whiz bang. So this is following the clerk of a justice. So the clerk, Helena, is our narrative voice, She is recounting the tales of Justice Conrad von Volt, and she is telling us the story of this time. Richard Swan does this so well. He's so good, and he creates such tension because it'll be like, and that was the last time we felt happiness for a long time. Or this was only before we knew what was yet to come. You know, like he throws in things like that where it's the the narration propels you along because the narrator definitely knows the fullness of the story. I've seen people describe this as religious horror, and I would like to disagree respectfully. I would like to call this eldritch horror. This reminds me of the sort of Lovecraftian, otherworldly monster realm. It reminds me of Stranger Things. You know, those ancient, nondescript monsters that come for you at night, those demons that creep out of the shadows and rip tears in reality. That is what this is. It is not religious horror, and I think some people call it religious horror because, like, there is, I guess, a religious order that has kind of taken on a power-hungry stance to take over the empire, and there is someone that they call brother, and there are nuns that are possessed, ritualistic chambers in the underground tunnels of the church. If you want to call that religious horror, I would say actually the Name of the Rose is more like religious horror, where it talks about those hidden cabals and the fear of heretics and how they torture people, and that's real. So I would call that horror. I think this is a fast-paced book. And I think most people, if they don't have, 2 children under 3, would be able to read this in a weekend, no problem. The first book, The Justice of Kings, I think I read in 3 days. This was amazing. This is like a 4.5 stars for me. It wasn't a 5 stars, and I think that's just because it took a long time for me to read. I will be continuing, and I discovered that my library has the 3rd book, so I am 100% going to take out that 3rd book, and I'm going to read that next year. If you like eldritch kind of horror and ancient magics and monsters that are indescribable, that just come and start to try and take over the world, The Red Knight has that in spades. So if you enjoy the Empire of the Wolf series, I think you would be really into The Red Knight. This one is a little bit more military focused, but it does have those monsters, and it only increases in monster level as each book goes. This one has more like dragons and stuff in it. And those were my 4 books. If you want to find out about my other books, you can always click my link below for my Leo season reading vlog. Altogether, August was a wonderful reading month, and I cannot wait for September. My name is Karen. I am the Book Libronaut. I explore all types of books. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.